Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are rolling for the U.S. Imperialism unit, and this won't take long. And again, this will be in your collection of notes on YouTube. You'll have this forever, even after you leave my class. So you need to know what imperialism is, first of all. That simply means that you take land from someone. Okay, and in this case, we are going to kind of explore how the U.S. handled that, navigated that, so to speak. Okay, so of course I told you what imperialism was, taking land from other countries. But once you do this enough, you can build what's called an empire. It's a collection of countries that you have taken from all over the world, and we ventured into this little journey after the late 1800s. We'll explore that here. All right, so one of the biggest endeavors of imperialism to the U.S. was the annexation of Hawaii. Okay, we basically took over Hawaii, and the main reason behind this was sugar. Okay, it's also a great place for a naval base, naval ports, so it would increase our military defense as well as our business. And so again, we took Hawaii in the late 1800s for that. There's the former Queen of Hawaii. I believe that is the head of the Dole Fruit Company. He had a lot to do with this annexation. All right, so we took Hawaii. That's one imperialist example. Let's talk about another way in which we turned imperialist, and class, that is through the Spanish-American War. It's not very long, only a few months. But the long story short was we needed Cuba. We needed Cuba as a colony. Spain owned it. And also, we just needed any excuse to go in and fight. Fight the Spanish. Maybe we can take Cuba back from them. And so we came up with all these ways. You know, again, it's just 90 miles away from us. But here's some of the reasons we, kind of decided we need to invade. None of this is illegal on terms for us. It doesn't warrant an invasion, but they were killing the Cubans, mistreating them, beating them, basically concentration camp slavery. Okay, so the U.S. is going through a bit of a progressive movement at the time, and they want to help the poor Cubans. Now, Americans heard about this through something called the yellow press. That is what we call today fake news. You sell it for clickbaits. All right, back then you just sell it. Okay, no clicking, but it's a page turner, right? It's exaggerated news that is really more designed to get you to buy it. Okay, so the Spanish-American War, in large part, was fueled by fake news. A lot of people read false information about the war and decided, I'm going to support this. Okay, and again, this is also known as sensationalism. Okay, nonetheless, lo and behold, February of 1898, there was a U.S. cargo ship called the USS Maine, which sunk outside of Cuba. And to this day, we don't know what caused it. But the yellow press got a hold of this and claimed that the Spanish did it. All right, so now we have a reason to go to war. Everybody is hyped up over the Spanish, and they really want to get in there, roll their sleeves up, and fight. Okay. Also, the yellow press may have exaggerated the conditions in Cuba. Like what you saw might not have always been true. Okay. And there's two gentlemen, Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst. Long story short, they have rival newspapers, and every week they were trying to outdo the other one who can have the craziest Spanish-American War story. Okay. So take this, for example. I'll let you pause the video at this time. Just analyze this, and once you pause it and look at it, stop to think why this is not historically accurate. Why is this not a good source to study for historical accuracy? Okay. All right. And if you looked at anything in that last image that I told you to pause, you understand this is just simply a line drawing. It's an exaggeration of what somebody claims they saw. If it's not a photo, you can't trust it. And hey, even then, you still need to look twice, okay, nowadays. So let's talk about Teddy Roosevelt's involvement with this war. Once the Maine sunk, we had a lot of volunteers want to go over there to Cuba, fight the Spanish, and free the Cubans. All right. One of those Americans was Teddy Roosevelt. At the time, I think he was like the Secretary of the Navy or something. Anyway, he left his desk job in Washington to go fight in the war with a group he created called the Rough Riders. If you see anything about them, just know they go down in history as like this brave, horseback American force led by Teddy Roosevelt. San Juan Hill was that big battle, and there he is. He will later come back to the U.S. and run for president and win. Or, excuse me, he is vice president, and he takes over. All right, so just real quick, technology. You can pause right here and see cowboy stuff with swords, basically. All right, and to kind of summarize here, we're getting ready to wrap here, but the Spanish-American War ended when we beat Spain, right? Spain surrendered, and they agreed to give us some land. Now, the question became, are we going to take Cuba for winning the war? And if you remember, the whole point of this war was to free the Cubans, okay? So if we were, if we were going to fight for their freedom and then turn around and become the new owners, now we kind of look like the bad guys. So we're not going to take Cuba, but with the Treaty of Paris, we will take a few other parts of the Spanish Empire, one of which is Guam. We also got the Philippines and Puerto Rico. Now, what this did for us was increased our sphere of influence, right? That is the area of Earth that you have a say-so in. And now, because we got more territory, we have more influence. It's not hard, just common sense stuff. It's going to increase our wealth. It's going to increase our military defense. We got land in the Pacific. Long story short, we became an imperialist nation. All right, and here's a map. What I'm highlighting right here with the laser, this is the U.S. All right, look, if somebody wanted to attack us, no planes back then, if they crossed the Pacific Ocean, look, we have bases in the Philippines and what is that, Guam? Yeah, we have bases out here, to deter that type of attack. If somebody was coming through the Atlantic Ocean, we got Puerto Rico. Go up there and get them. Okay, so again, we got the Philippines and other parts. Okay, now everything was good with this new colonization, this imperialism, except in the Philippines. Okay, there's a guy named Emilio Aguinaldo in the Philippines. He was very anti-American. He did not want us there. They actually formed a secret army, kind of like a backyard militia. And they fought against us, to try to kick us out of the Philippines. Go home, We beat them. Nonetheless, that is referred to as an insurgency when people rise against those in power, okay? Just a few terms that we're going to recap here for the end, but you need to know what a jinjo is. If you're an extreme patriot, you love America more than anything, and they can do no wrong, you're a jinjo. That's jinjoism. Okay, typically this is associated with the Yellow Press and the Spanish-American War. We also need to be aware of the Platt Amendment. Again, I told you that if we became Cuba's new masters, so to speak, all of a sudden we look like the bad guy. The very thing we were trying to fight, we would have become, right? So, of course, we issued this thing called the Platt Amendment. It says we will not own Cuba after this war, but they will do what we say for a few years, basically. We won't get into all that, but that's it, okay? Also, back home, not everybody was cool with taking over land. You had groups like the Anti-Imperialist, League. They were very much against the taking of Hawaii and Cuba and Guam and Puerto Rico, all of that, okay? And again, Platt Amendment kind of goes hand in hand with the Teller Amendment. Same thing, just about. Okay, you should know what guerrilla warfare is, so we'll move along. Okay, now we're done talking about Spain. Next thing we talk about with them should be the Roosevelt corollary. Let's discuss Asia. All right, chiefly the business aspect of Asia. Y'all know, as you're watching this video in the 2020s, the name China is a very different name from 1899. China was not what it back then it's not what is today. It was very crowded, but they were not westernized. They didn't have the technology, they didn't have industry. It was everything made by hand. It was like an anime or something. Like if you see an old movie, about feudal China, feudal Japan, kind of looked like that. But nonetheless, China did have something that we needed, and that's resources and customers, right? If we could get business deals and trading deals with China in the 1890s, we could make a lot of money. We could get a lot of cheap labor and a lot of cheap resources. So what we did was we tried to make peace with them with this thing called the open door policy. Okay, all it says is if you trade with the U.S., you got to trade with everybody at the same equal rate. Okay, it's just about equal trade with China. But really, if we didn't move in and try to open this trade, somebody else would do it and keep it closed. Okay, now let's move on to the Roosevelt corollary. Be familiar with the Monroe Doctrine of 1823. That is just basically saying that European countries cannot come to our side of the world, the Western Hemisphere or Latin America. All right, we're right above Latin America. Okay. But again, nonetheless, European countries ain't supposed to be over here without permission, okay? So we will upgrade that with President Teddy Roosevelt's rule called the Roosevelt Corollary, right? Take a look in green. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is the side of Earth that you Americans live on. There's the U.S., and right below us, everything in green is Latin America, okay? That means once upon a time, everything you see in green was owned by Spain, all right? That's why they speak Spanish. Some are Portuguese, which is similar, but you get the idea, okay? Don't need an isthmus. You do need to know about the Panama Canal, and I'll be able to illustrate this on a map. We basically made a shortcut through the Isthmus of Panama. Saves time on business travel, saves time on military travel, and also we don't use it now, but we charged people to use it, okay? So this canal really did a lot for us. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is much better, all right? Could you imagine, instead of, if you leave California, the West Coast, instead of going all the way south, almost to Antarctica, then up the coast of South America, look, you had to do all that to get to Europe. We just cut a hole right here. Now, you just do this, whoop, right through the middle, all right? Again, we cut a hole through here, okay, to pass through. It made travel way easier. Now, we did have to get a little shady with it. We did have to invoke a revolution, right? We told the Panamanians, who were actually owned by Colombia, that if they revolt, we would help them. Okay, so they did it. They declared independence, and it didn't get too violent. They knew we were on their team, and the famous Teddy quote is, "I took the isthmus." There's a cartoon of good old Teddy. Okay. Also, be familiar with the United States' stance on this. We wanted to really show our might off. We wanted to show what we had, show that we were prepared for war. Don't mess with the U.S. So one of our symbols of dominance is what we call the Great White Fleet. All right, you're supposed to paint a battleship blue or gray so you can't see it on the water. Roosevelt got these and painted them white. And he wanted you to see him, like this is what America has. And he went on tour, went all across the world to show them off, intimidate the competition, so to speak. There they are, right there in black and white. But hey, we can still see them here. Okay. Now, Roosevelt is not the only imperialist president. There are two others from this era that we study, and that is Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, and Woodrow Wilson. So we're getting ready to close with this, but each one of these men have a different foreign policy. Like Roosevelt deals with foreign problems in a different way than Taft, and Taft deals in a different way than Wilson. So let's examine, starting with Roosevelt. His diplomacy is called the big stick diplomacy. Basically, speak softly, but carry a big stick, right? We're going to build the military, but we're not going to use it unless you make me, okay? Don't fight unless you have to, but be ready to fight, all right? He was about that military action. Now, Taft was not. William Howard Taft, his replacement, the one after Teddy Roosevelt, He used something called dollar diplomacy, and you literally use gifts, money, and tax breaks and donations to pay your opponents till they like you. You know, if you are paying somebody, they will very quickly become your ally, and all of a sudden you don't have any issues anymore. Okay, so it was costly, but here's his quote: "I'm swapping bullets for dollars." Now, the last foreign policy we'll look at here is moral diplomacy. We need to help nations who share our beliefs on freedom and human rights so that we can then spread those freedoms on human rights all over the world. And that's pretty much all that we'll talk about on Wilson and the others. Here's a chart. Feel free to pause this and absorb this information. And don't forget, remind your parents as well, class, that these are in Canvas. You know, these notes have been here since the start of the school year, so keep that in mind. All right, and that is the end of this particular presentation. We're at the 15-minute mark. So I will see y'all next time, and good luck.